Hello, I'm Dr. Teresa A. Smith, Dr. TAS. Welcome to Reclaiming Your Voice. This is a limited vertical series centered on identity, authorship, and what it means to reclaim who you are after your voice has been shaped, muted, or managed by systems, roles, or expectation. This series is not about finding something new. It's about restoring what already belonged to you. Across these conversations, we explore how your voice is formed, how it's suppressed, and reclaimed with clarity, courage, and purpose. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Velma Bagby, whose works directly speaks to identity recovery, creative expression, and spiritual restoration in real life. So, wherever you're listening from, take a breath, settle in, and let us talk about what it means to reclaim your voice. We know silence has consequences: emotional, creative, physical, spiritual, corporate laryngitis, and the cost of silence is what we got to look at. So, Dr. Velma, oh, she done, God, she ready for y'all now. What happens when people suppress their voice too long?
I thought you were going to go with why do they suppress it?
We can go there.
There are different reasons people
Mhm.
suppress their voice.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's in a relationship and you're not allowed. Sometimes it's on your job and therefore you must represent the brand of the job.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's your ethnicity and your voice is not welcomed in certain environments. Other times you're in a family and there's certain ones that rise to the top and are identified as the ones that can speak, but not you. There are all kinds of examples of what can cause this to happen. But when you yourself, purposely make the decision that you're not going to say anything, I looked up what happens when a person purposely silences their own voice. There's a condition that's called chronic selective mutism. So you're not mute, but you purposely mute yourself. And it says that when a person does this and they remain in this state for years, guess what happens? They begin to develop vocal weakness. They begin to lose their ability to talk and eventually suffer from social isolation. So there you are, all alone with nothing to say. Because if you did have something to say, because of what you've done to your voice by silencing it for years, you can actually mute and have difficulties vocalizing it when you make the decision to do that. So the goal is that we encourage and inspire people to really use their voice. Now, I was silenced for 38 years on my job. I had only my job to represent. I remember going into a ministry, my husband and I, people were jealous of different people. And I remember having an assignment in that ministry. And the person went to my pastor expressing the fact that they wanted what I was doing. So the pastor at the time decided to sit me down. But what he did was he created a lie to use that as his excuse. I don't think you fit this part right. And only because he was trying to satisfy this jealous person who wanted the position instead. So when he told me that, I said, if this is what you feel about me operating in this assignment, I have about 3 other assignments in this church. Why don't I sit down from all of them?
Come on now.
And so that's what I did. So I was silenced by jealousy of a person who wanted my position instead. The pastor was shocked when I made the decision to sit down from all of them. My husband had a fit and had a private conversation with the pastor about having conversations with his wife without him being present ever again.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually we left that ministry. So that's the reason we include church organizations for that reason, because sometimes you're silenced there. So I'm saying that when you suppress it, which means that you either willingly suppress it or someone puts an end to your voice and won't allow it to allow you to express yourself. Whatever the reason, they're never good. They're never good reasons because your voice is intended to be spoken. There's always people out there in the audience, and I was taught there are people so connected to you, they won't change what they're doing, or they won't be inspired to do what they need to do until they hear from you. And that's every person has this group of people waiting on them. And so when I'm reminded of that, that prevents me and keeps me from shutting down. I'm right now trying to think of, okay, I got to bring back my dating relationship stuff. Where am I going to put it? And what's the best platform? And I decided on a particular platform, I got to start bringing that out, because that, for me, on one particular platform, just blew up. And so again, I'm hope I'm inspiring someone. Don't sit on it, because your voice is intended to touch someone that nobody else can but you.
Now, Dr. Velma, you've given us a couple good examples about this, the suppression of the voice. Now, I want to go back a moment just for the audience. When we say the phrase corporate laryngitis, what are you really talking about? What does that mean in real terms? Because you gave us a good example, but help us to understand, what does that mean in real life?
Real life, it means when you work for a business and they're paying your salary, they have hired you to do a job for them, which means that your job should always represent them, their brand, their message, their messaging, their marketing, whatever your assignment is, you represent them. It's not your personal opinion when you're talking to a customer for that company. It's the company's opinion. It's not your personal opinion when you're writing letters on their behalf. It has to be their language and what they want you to communicate in it. And so therefore, you're silenced in that way. That's what laryngitis does. It keeps you from speaking. It affects your vocal cords. And so you cannot speak. So when it's corporate laryngitis, it means that whatever that organization is that you're serving or working for, you must represent their voice and their voice only. You don't get to talk and express your own personal feelings. So you have to keep your emotions and everything out of it. It's exactly what they ask you to do. And that's what was my job for 38 years. And so therein, I was very creative before working. I was very creative outside of the job before I got that. It was just who I was. But while I was there for 38 years, all of that was shut down because I couldn't use any of that on the job.
So you're saying for 38 years, basically, because you had to use that corporate voice, your creativity and I'm going to say perhaps your confidence and your ability to make decisions was impacted because you, in a sense, was brainwashed into brainwashed from the perspective, guys, of if I want to get my paycheck, I got to speak.
I have to do right. I have to do what they're telling me to do. The only thing that I found was I had to find creative ways to keep myself satisfied. I mean, yeah, if I had to design a program or create a training package because we've got this new program that's coming out and all the employees need to be trained on what to do, so I had to create that. I found my creativity there where I'm developing. The other thing that I did was there were times when I was sent to other areas. If an area wasn't performing at the level that they should be, sometimes my manager would send me there to help bring them along so I could use my creativity there. I was a process improvement guru. I loved improving something that wasn't working well. And so I could satisfy my creativity there in those moments. Not that I can put my own opinion and my own expression in there, but I found by reassessing something that we're doing and taking it through the process of determining what we don't have to do anymore and how can we streamline it. Those were the moments when I felt my creative genes were being used because I loved doing that. But beyond that, it was still their voice. It was still the way they wanted it to be said. But if I could take a continuous improvement project and they would send me to do that, to correct what was broken and to fix what needed to be fixed, those were the moments I could be me, but not to the point where I expressed my own opinion about it. I still had to follow corporate rules and what the corporate brand had to say.
That is so important, Dr. Velma, because we're using the language corporate, but as we've already stated previously, corporate is organizations, it's systems.
Yeah.
So whether it's your 9 to 5 job, or
Yeah.
we're talking our families, we're talking the relationships that we're in, personal romantic relationships, our friend relationships, our churches, our sororities,
That's right.
everything is a corporate system, because there's protocol about how you act in your family, depending upon where you are in the birth order, and maybe how much money you got, and what you've done in life, because you get they would say, the kids would say street creds, but you get clout, you get privilege based on what your status is. And so then you know how to govern yourself. And what I thought was so significant, that what you said was, though, that you were able to mitigate the psychological impacts of this suppression when you were able to use your creativity for projects, continuous improvement projects, or trainings and things of that nature, still within the confines of the corporate voice, but you were still able to do those things that, in essence, brought you some satisfaction, some pleasure.
Yeah.
That's how you managed it.
And I think that came from, I think in one of my books, Hold Your Head Up, Princess, it came from my childhood, middle school, when I first faced being labeled, what the world felt about me, just going into school and enjoying my life. Yeah, I didn't know I was poor until you guys labeled me that. Oh, I didn't know it was a bad thing to be raised by a single mother and she had seven kids until you guys told me that. Oh, I didn't know I was a latchkey kid until you showed me on the TV. That's who I was, because I had to let myself in. So all of those things, and in my little world, from that moment on, when they began to classify me, I'm going, why would they say that? I'm set out in my mind. Okay, well, let me just let you see something different about me. Despite all this other stuff you're saying about me, I'm going to hit the honor roll on a regular basis, and then you'll see who I am, despite the single mother raising me, despite the fact that I live in a poor neighborhood, despite the fact that I'm being raised among it's close to 7 siblings, and despite the fact that I'm African American, despite the fact, all these things. Because when you prepare to go into junior high and high school, that paperwork you have to fill out to explain your life and explain where you're going and explain where you're coming from and explain your situation. I realized I'm not going to focus on what you're assessing me, how you're assessing me and my life and my experience. I'm just going to demonstrate who I am. And that's what I set out to do. And so I found that I did that throughout my life, and remain that way, even in what I just described in my corporate world. I found ways to satisfy who I am in those moments. And they actually found value in what I did, because I said they began to call me the continuous improvement guru. So if there was a problem anywhere in one of the areas, send Velma. Velma handled it. Velma can fix it. And so that's what happened in junior high. Same thing. Continue to get that kind of misconception about me, because the world had its own view of who African Americans were. And then my very first job, my goal was to get off of my mother's payroll. And I wanted to go to work first, go to school at night. So I got my first job working for that same government, state of California, and got my first job as a secretary, because I set out to do that. In high school, took 2 years of stenography. So I still know stenography by hand. Took all the business courses I needed, because we had all of that in high school, so that I can go right into a job. I got that job. And what happens as a secretary, the other 2 secretaries weren't of the same ethnicity. So they decided to partner up and see how many bad things they could say about me, until I got my first probationary report. And it said that you walk through the office too haughty and proud. That was from them. And my supervisor told me that, and just almost broke my heart. I'm going, I worked so hard around here. I said, you know what? I'm just going to change your perception of me. And so I set out to learn every equipment in the building, how to fix it, how to repair it, what it needed when it wasn't functioning right, until finally, whose name was on everybody's voice mouth in the building. Get Velma. She can do it. Oh, Velma knows how to fix it until the two change their mind. And here's what happened. Here's what God will do. I rose to the top as the deputy administrator over years, got that job. And so now I'm not working in the office. I'm overseeing the offices. So I get to come back down I was working in Sacramento, come back down for a meeting. And who comes to the door to greet me, to take me into the meeting? But one of those secretaries who's now just a staff member. Her eyes bucked. She wasn't sure what I was going to say. And I did not satisfy her with anything that I said. Hey, how are you doing? How's it going? I'm glad I made it to the meeting, blah, blah, blah. Can you show me where the meeting is, blah, blah. It's good to see you. Mm-hmm. She almost fell out.
Yes.
So I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let those kind of things delay me or postpone me or silence me, in the sense that the creativity of that side of you that you are good at doesn't have to be silenced. You may not be able to say specifically what you feel about a situation or express it in writing or even verbally, but you can demonstrate who you are, even with being silenced. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So I trained myself to do that from middle school throughout my life. That's what I've done. Even when my voice was silenced, I learned to show my creativity in another way.
You know, Dr. Velma, that's so powerful. I'm gonna say, Lord help me, because she laughed and said, I don't know. This is how Dr. Velma is guy. Because I want to draw out some things, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So I'm saying, Lord help me, because you talked about we have to comply.
Yes.
Because we have to, let's just leave it with your family. You know, you're born to them folks, and you're gonna be with them. I'm sorry, whether you want to go see them or what, that's your family.
That's right.
You make a choice to stay in relationships. You make choices to stay on jobs. But there's this thing about compliance. And I think sometimes we think that if we comply, we're safe. If we comply, we're successful. Now, I'm talking jobs now, and I'm talking relationships.
Okay.
You can comply and not be successful. Velma was doing everything she was supposed to do on her job. And then you're going to get a notice, your first evaluation is going to talk about she walking around.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how our walk was supposed to be, what we was evaluating. I thought we was evaluating my actual performance, doing the work that I'm supposed to do. But she didn't let that stop her, because even then, that was an attack against identity. Yeah. That was, again, to begin to silence the voice, because voice and identity go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. Then you talked about when you was in middle school, and I didn't know I was poor. I didn't know I was a latchkey kid. I didn't know it meant something bad because I was being raised by a single mom. Well, no, we don't know that. I didn't know being African American meant that I was less than. No, I didn't know that until you told me that.
You said that. Mm-hmm.
And then I got a choice. Am I going to accept that or not? Well, this is about my identity, so we know I'm not going to accept that, because I understand that there's purpose with everybody that's born, because you already talked about that, Velma, and the fact that your voice, there are people who are waiting for your creativity in this area. So I'm not going to let you put me, it's like Dear Dirty Dance. You're not going to put baby in a corner, because nobody puts baby in a corner. I'm going to come out of that corner, and I'm going to fight to reclaim my voice. And then when I thought about, that's how we have to overcome those psychological effects of the silence and who we can be. Because if you had given into that, they said I'm too haughty, but no, your thing was, okay, so it's nice to know y'all think I'm too haughty. Well, I'm gonna go about doing my job a different way. I'm gonna learn everything I can. And in a movie, in a series years ago, is FX Damages. Glenn Close, and I want to say it's Rose Brand. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. But anyway, at one point, the character says, learn everything you can and get out. I've never forgotten that. Because again, as I get older, I understand why you have to get out, because they're only going to let you learn so much. Right. And then at some point, if you're still there, the only thing to do is to silence you. Because now I got to remove your identity from you in order to keep you at a certain level. Now, some people would say, Taza, you talk about being on the plantation. Well, all of us on the plantation. Now, I can do sci-fi right now, but I won't. But y'all can take plantation to be anything you want it to be. It doesn't mean necessarily just slavery. Everybody in the plantation. Yeah. Now, again, they got to keep me in a certain place on the plantation. So, then I think about what you were getting at too about the relationships, because suppression can show up in relationships and in leadership roles. And if you had not understood who you were and whose you were, because now we're going to go back to when the pastor said, I'm going to have to sit you down from that one little spot. Oh, that's okay. So if you want to sit me down from that, I just sit down from everything. Because you see, my thing is, because I'm Miss Glory down. If I ain't good enough to do that, baby, I ain't good enough to do none of this stuff. You're not going to work me like I'm a, oh God, he's just so good. He catches me sometimes. Now, Jay, you know what I was about to say. You just can't work me like I'm a mule. You can't work me like I'm a mule all the time and think I'm okay with it. Like I don't understand what you're doing. So basically, because somebody else that you want to be in their good graces, because you rather be deceived in order to be received. That's that Dennis Perkins thing that I was talking about in the last episode. You'd rather be deceived so you can be received. So pastor wanted to be received, and in that woman's good graces, I'm gonna tell a lie, sit Velma down. But right. Down for that because that woman won't that. Well, no, Velma said I just sit down for everything, and we can just call it a day. Again, psychological warfare. Dennis and I talked about that too in Faith Matters. It's a psychological, it's a psych op, as he was referring to. It's a psychological warfare that's at play when people take your voice. I don't care who took it.
Yeah.
You're laying in the bed, but you could have took your voice, baby.
Right.
It's an operation that's taking place. And so, Velma, you've talked about how you were able very early in middle school, how people would try to take your voice and put you on a shelf and say, this is all that you can be. And when you then brought it full circle, I got to come back to that meeting, then you brought it full circle. In that leadership role, that deputy leadership role, that Black woman, who my little notes, y'all know I can't read my notes, but I'll be halfway making that Black woman who was a latchkey kid raised by a single mother who had about 7 kids.
Poor neighborhood.
And she halted, and I got to admit her for the meeting. That's that same woman. They tell me you see her make your enemies your footstool. Now that's a good example of that.
That's right.
Good example.
Right.
He did that. So now them. Goodness gracious, you just be laying down so much for the audience. I be trying to help them to see what you're saying. See, they not getting it like I'm getting it.
Oh, you getting it, really. I just want to go back to something.
Go ahead.
The haughtiness came from the manner in which I walked through the office. I walked through the office with my head up.
Come on here.
All because my mother told us, walk with your head up unless you have something to be ashamed of. So I've always practiced. My head would be elevated just a little bit. Yeah. It wasn't about arrogance or being haughty. It was just about being taught. Don't hold your head down unless you have something to be ashamed of. And so that was what I was doing at the time. And I wanted to also go back to when we talked about suppressing our voice. Even in a marriage or relationship, there's a difference between suppressing your voice and showing grace. I voluntarily, because right now I need to show you some grace. So I just wanted to go back to those 2 little points.
Yeah, why you want to bring that point out? Lord Jesus, help us somebody. Now, in the South, because I'm Southern, and I know you have some Southern roots. Yeah, we were taught that you walk with your head up. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It doesn't mean you're better than other people. Well, let me say that differently. I can't say everybody will. I was taught that you walk with your head up. And I can tell you, I got some backlash from that. And I never really thought much about it until just now. Because I guess for other people, maybe they weren't taught to do that. No. But I was taught you don't walk around with your head down. But somebody said to my mother many moons ago, I've heard her say it. They said to her, "Your head is so far up in the air, you know when it's raining before anybody else."
Oh,
But
wow.
Mama was raised by grandmama, Miss Laney. Because sometimes I say I was Miss Laney's granddaughter. Those are days that I'd be really on it. Grandmama was a different sort of woman. That's who the mama says are things from my grandmother. But that's what she taught my mother. Well, that got passed down to me. It didn't mean that I thought I was better than everybody else. That's my upbringing.
Not at all. Yeah.
That's how, probably from my grandmother's
Mhm.
mindset and from her day, because as I always tell grandmother, like I knew her mother. Her mother died before she graduated from high school, but I just feel like I know grandma better than mama sometimes.
Right.
Grandmama grew up in a time where people, I have to say this politically correct, they were striving for better.
Mhm.
And it meant a whole lot to them. Education, the ability to achieve things. Your kids were presented well because they understood, like elementary teachers used to tell me, "Oh, we know what your home life is like by how you act." Well, I never forgot that. Well, they won't say that to me. They didn't make these little statements in class, So I was listening to them because they said to me, "Oh, they are making their expectations about me are based upon my behavior." So my parents sent me to school and they told me how I was going to behave. And I was in a small community, and Miss Vita Mae Flowers would stop by the house anytime. And she knew the people because she had taught my dad and had all his siblings. So they would come to your church because you knew these people. So when you went to school, you knew to behave correctly. So when the teacher talked to you, you look at them in the eye. They talk to you. No, you hold your head down. You look at
them. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So again, it's amazing how manners that we were taught to have and how to interact with people can be used against us when it's contrary to what that culture accepts.
Yeah.
Now, guys, that we can't go no further on that because that's not.
I just want you to know I was raised by Southern mother, who's my grandmother from the South too. So that trickle down effect, like you're saying, came from them.
And they knew that it was important based upon the world that they grew up in. And it's so sad that sometimes what was instilled in us, people try to make it appear as if there's something wrong with that. But that's still better. To make them feel better, that's still the enemy coming to us, that deceiving. We're back to Genesis again. I tell you, we can't get out. Y'all, Genesis is something. You can't get away from it. Because it's still that deceiving, that subtleness of trying to take our voice from us, take our voice from us. So, Dr. Velma, let me try to move on because we can stay on that a minute. Because you talked a lot about those 38 years. When does silence shift from strategic messaging to harmfulness? Meaning that's our corporate voice. You were there for 38 years. This is how we interact with our constituents. But when does it go from being our strategic way of communicating to actually being harmful for the people, the employees of that organization, or the people who go to that church, or that family, or that relationship that you're in?
Well, I found that as I rose, higher and higher on the corporate ladder, I set out to make sure that the employees were valued. I introduced what many call top-down decision making was the order of the day, but I introduced bottom-up decision making. And when I introduced that, and again, I loved creativity and I loved introducing new methods. Remember, I was talking about I became a continuous improvement guru, and that was something my deputy director valued about me. And so I tried to make sure that the staff had a voice in the matters of change, in the matters of making adjustments when new things came to be, and we had to look at who was going to do the job and how we were going to structure it and place it into the offices. I called together groups of employees in each of the office so that they would have the permission to meet regularly as a team to develop a recommendation. Mm-hmm. So keeping in mind that we still had to stick with what the rules were. We still had to follow the protocol, And if the corporation wants to introduce a new service to its customers, how do we now apply it? That's still keeping within, what they require. But it gave the staff a moment to be creative and be a part of the change. And I always made sure I did that. And one of the deputy administrators, one of my partners, there was 4 of us for the whole northern area of California. The other 2 deputies said, that's a little dangerous. But my boss said, actually, it isn't. It's a great idea to take a different approach. So I was given permission to do that. So every now and then you can introduce something a little different, even though it's not going to change the corporate setting. It would help to improve the environment for the employees who had to do the job. And they loved it. I had more employees at my retirement party than managers, who many of whom retired. One even filed a complaint on me saying that, because I wanted the voice of their staff, they felt like they were being left out, which told me they were one of those that silenced everybody. And so he filed that complaint, and it was a wash, basically. There was nothing there. What I challenged that person on, I challenged all my managers on. And like they said, they were dropping like flies. They started retiring because they were sitting in positions doing nothing. And I didn't like that. And so giving the staff a voice really gained momentum for me in the areas to get the changes done, because the staff was right there with me, making sure that it happened.
And Dr. Velma, I'm sure with that, you also you made sure it was a cross-representation.
Of course.
Because oftentimes, as you know, just like with the 2 ladies that you started out years ago with, people only listen to certain people, which means you always get the same. As I said in one of the sessions, people want you to tell them what people. I don't want you to tell me what you think. I want to know. I want you to tell me what you think. But they were able to give people what they wanted to hear in order to keep the culture the same. And like the person that filed suit, that was a change in culture. They weren't ready for people to have a voice, to have an identity. Because think about it, guys. When you have an identity, you got a purpose. That means you deserve respect.
Right. And the only African-American deputy in all of Northern California. The first time I saw fellow African-American deputy administrators was when we had a statewide meeting, and all those folks from Southern California came to the meeting in LA. I'm going, whoa, where'd they come from? Mm-hmm. I was the only one. So I knew that was always part of the conversation. Well, why is she? Yes. How come her? Because the other 3 deputies on the team were not African-American. 1 male and the other 2 were females, but still, it said a lot about who I was. And yet they always questioned who I was and why did I have the authority to do what I was doing.
I like that. It said a lot about who you were, but people always question who you were. And I'm going to say it this way, and why you were allowed, and then I'm going to say how you could do it.
Well,
and I want to go to that do it, how you could do something. Yeah. Because sometimes folks, and you tell me, Dr. Velma, because this is your area, sometimes people try to silence us, as you talked about earlier with the jealousy with the lady, but sometimes people try to silence us because they see even sometimes things that we don't even see yet, that we haven't recognized in ourselves. Yeah. They see that gifting, they see the talent, they see how you're different and how that difference is received. And instead of working with you, for the common good of everybody, they will suppress you. Ooh, but I'm here to tell you today, bring this to a close. I'm here to tell you today that no devil in hell can suppress what God has put in you. No. If God put it in you, he's going to bring it out of you. And
Yeah.
he's going to bring it out in ways that those who wanted to suppress it will never be able to imitate, because he cannot be imitated. He is the God who makes everything uniquely, and he qualifies us. So again, whomever that is for, I hope that that will give you a sense of comfort in knowing that God makes no mistakes. And sometimes the silencing for that particular corporate entity is not about you having done anything wrong. They do the psychological op to make you think there's something wrong with you. You disrespectful, you this, you that. You don't look the part. You don't have the right clothes. We don't like your hair this way. You too big, you too skinny, whatever it is, you're not married to the right man. Well, you're not married at all. You don't have any children. Whatever it is to make you feel less than, because you talked about it when you rolled down that list from middle school, whatever it is to make you feel less than so that they can rob you of your identity. And
Yeah.
when people can rob you of your identity, they begin to chip away at your purpose.
Yeah.
Dr. Velma, it's just, there's just so much here that I just be wanting to get to, but I try to be obedient because I know we just can't do it all every time.
You're
So to
good.
our audience, I want to say thank you for spending this time with us. Reclaiming your voice is not a single moment. It is a process of remembering, choosing, and practicing truth in everyday life. As you move through the rest of your week, I invite you to reflect on this question. Where have you been speaking from habit? And where are you being invited to speak from truth? You don't have to rush to answer. Restoration takes time, and that's okay. This conversation is part of a 4-episode limited series. Each episode stands on its own, but together they explore identity, authorship, and purpose beyond performance. And if you don't know what I mean by performance, like I told Miss Gloria when I was a little girl, because I talked to her about it the other day, I said, didn't I used to tell you that? She's like, mm-hmm. I said my mama wasn't put on. So when I say performance, I mean pretending. Pretending. So this is not about pretending. This is about having the ability to actually reclaim your voice and your identity, your authorship, and your purpose. So remember, before you go trying to take care of someone else, make sure you take care of yourself first. Bye now.